The fragile peace of the Middle East was shattered once again in the early hours of June 13, 2025. In a meticulously planned military operation named Operation Rising Lion, the State of Israel launched a series of precise airstrikes against Iran's most sensitive nuclear and missile installations. These were not just warning shots. The attacks were designed to inflict maximum damage on Tehran's long-contested nuclear program. Reports quickly emerged detailing the destruction of key infrastructure, and more significantly, the elimination of high-value targets. Israel's government remained officially silent on the specifics, but sources confirmed the operation was a direct response to escalating concerns over Iran's nuclear advancements. This bold move was preceded by a United Nations report in May 2025, which found Iran in violation of its nuclear non-proliferation agreements, adding a layer of international legitimacy to Israel's actions in the eyes of its allies. The immediate aftermath was chaotic and violent. Iran, reeling from the blow, did not hesitate to retaliate with overwhelming force. Within hours, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched a massive barrage of over 150 missiles aimed at strategic locations within Israel. Sirens blared across Israeli cities as the Iron Dome defense system scrambled to intercept the incoming threats, a fiery spectacle lighting up the night sky. On the diplomatic front, the consequences were just as swift. Iran announced its indefinite withdrawal from the scheduled nuclear talks with the United States in Muscat, Oman, effectively slamming the door on any immediate chance for de-escalation through dialogue. The attack and counterattack pushed the two regional adversaries to the very brink of an all-out war, a conflict the world has long feared. Into this volatile situation stepped a powerful global player, China. Beijing's reaction was unusually direct and sharp. A spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry issued a stern public condemnation of Israel's actions. The statement declared that Israel had unequivocally crossed a red line. This was not the typical, carefully worded diplomatic language that the world is accustomed to hearing from Beijing. The phrase red line carries immense weight in international politics, signaling a point of no return and a grave warning of potential consequences. This strong stance immediately shifted the focus of the crisis, adding a new and dangerous dimension involving a superpower's declared interests in the heart of the Middle East. The international community was instantly divided, with reactions pouring in from capitals around the globe. Russia and Turkey quickly joined China in condemning the Israeli strikes, echoing the sentiment that such unilateral military actions were a threat to regional stability. Western nations, while expressing concern over the escalation, were more measured, pointing to Iran's own provocations and its breach of nuclear agreements. The United States found itself in a difficult position, balancing its steadfast support for its ally Israel with the urgent need to prevent a wider regional conflagration. The world watched, holding its breath, as the crisis evolved from a bilateral confrontation into a complex geopolitical chessboard with major powers choosing their sides. To understand China's forceful reaction, one must look at its deep and multifaceted relationship with Iran. This is not a new friendship. It is a strategic partnership that has been cultivated for decades, built on a foundation of mutual interests that stand in contrast to the Western-led global order. For China, Iran is far more than just another country in the Middle East. It is an essential economic lifeline and a geopolitical anchor. The most critical component of this relationship is energy. As the world's largest importer of oil, China relies heavily on a steady supply to fuel its massive economy. Iran, rich in oil but crippled by Western sanctions, has found a willing and vital customer in Beijing, selling over 90% of its crude exports to the Asian giant. Beyond the barrels of oil, Iran serves a crucial strategic purpose for China's ambitious global agenda. Beijing sees Iran as a key partner in its Belt and Road Initiative, a colossal infrastructure project designed to connect Asia with Africa and Europe, creating new trade routes and expanding Chinese influence. Iran's geographic location makes it a natural land bridge connecting Central Asia to the Persian Gulf and beyond. Furthermore, China views Iran as an important counterweight to American influence in the Middle East. By supporting the Iranian regime, Beijing can challenge the United States' dominance in a region that is critically important for global energy security and trade, effectively playing a long game for regional sway. This partnership extends into the military and technological spheres. China has become a significant supplier of military hardware and advanced technology to Iran. This includes everything from conventional weapons to sophisticated components like computer chips, which are essential for Iran's drone and missile programs. This support doesn't just stay within Iran's borders. It flows onward to Iran's network of regional proxies, including groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi militia in Yemen, and Hamas in Gaza. Through this support, China indirectly projects its power across the region, creating challenges for the United States and its allies, including Israel, without deploying its own troops. Therefore, when Israel struck Iran, it wasn't just attacking a regional adversary, it was striking a cornerstone of China's foreign policy in the Middle East. The successful Israeli operation, which reportedly eliminated key Iranian military and scientific personnel, was perceived in Beijing as a direct blow to its own strategic investments. It exposed the vulnerability of its key regional partner and, by extension, represented a significant setback for China's carefully laid plans. The attack effectively disrupted the network that China has been patiently building to advance its own influence, forcing Beijing to react not just as a distant observer, but as a directly impacted stakeholder. When a global power like China declares that a red line has been crossed, the world must pay close attention. The term itself is a deliberate and powerful piece of diplomatic vocabulary. It is not an idle threat, but a formal signal that a nation's core interests have been violated to an unacceptable degree. In this context, China's red line signifies that Israel's direct, large-scale attack on Iran's sovereign territory and its critical infrastructure goes beyond the shadowy, deniable skirmishes of the past. It represents an escalation that, from Beijing's perspective, fundamentally alters the strategic balance in the Middle East and directly threatens its own extensive interests tied to Iran's stability and strength. The red line is about protecting a strategic asset. China has invested enormous political and economic capital in Iran. An Iran that is militarily crippled or politically destabilized is an unreliable partner for Beijing. The Israeli strike threatened to do just that, potentially leading to regime instability or a full-scale war that would engulf the region. Such a conflict would severely disrupt China's oil supplies, derail its Belt and Road Initiative projects, and create a vacuum of chaos right on the doorstep of Central Asia, a region where China has its own security concerns. The red line is therefore a declaration that China will not passively accept the dismantling of its key Middle Eastern partner. Furthermore, this declaration is a message to the United States as much as it is to Israel. For years, China has watched the U.S. wield its influence in the Middle East, often to Beijing's disadvantage. By drawing a red line, China is asserting its own role as a major power broker in the region. It is signaling to Washington that the days of unilateral American-backed military actions against countries of strategic importance to China are over. This is a bold claim to a new level of influence, an attempt to establish a new set of rules for engagement in the region where Beijing's interests must be considered and respected by all other international actors. Ultimately, crossing this red line implies that there will be consequences. While it does not necessarily mean direct military intervention by China, it suggests that Beijing may retaliate in other ways. Analyst Gordon Chang warns that China could encourage its proxies to retaliate against U.S. or allied interests, or it could escalate tensions in other parts of the world, such as the South China Sea or the Taiwan Strait, to put pressure on Washington. China could also use its powerful position on the UN Security Council to block any measures favorable to Israel, or increase its military and economic support for Iran to help it rebuild and rearm, ensuring its partner remains a formidable force. The fallout from this crisis extends far beyond the immediate conflict between Israel and Iran. It serves as a stark illustration of the shifting tectonic plates of global power. China's decision to draw a red line in the Middle East signals its growing confidence and willingness to directly challenge the long-standing U.S.-led international order. For decades, the United States has been the primary external power shaping events in the region. China's assertive stance suggests that this era is now being contested, and the Middle East is becoming a central arena for the growing rivalry between Washington and Beijing, making the region even more volatile. This event has also, paradoxically, created a potential opening for Chinese diplomacy. With the United States so closely allied with Israel, it is not seen as a neutral mediator by Iran or its supporters. Some political figures, like former U.S. vice presidential nominee Tim Walz, have suggested that China, despite its clear support for Iran, might now be perceived by some as holding the moral authority to step in and de-escalate the conflict. This puts China in a powerful position. If Beijing can successfully mediate a truce or broker a new understanding, it would be a massive diplomatic victory, solidifying its status as an indispensable global leader and peacemaker. However, the path forward is fraught with peril for world peace. The escalation between Israel and Iran, now amplified by the China-US rivalry, increases the risk of a miscalculation that could spiral into a much larger war. A regional conflict in the Middle East would have catastrophic consequences for the global economy, disrupting energy markets and supply chains, and potentially drawing in other countries. The presence of multiple nuclear-armed or near-nuclear-armed states, Israel and potentially Iran, with the backing of nuclear powers like the US and China, makes the stakes terrifyingly high. The world is watching to see if diplomacy can pull the key players back from the brink. In simple terms, what we have witnessed is a very dangerous moment. Israel attacked Iran because it feared Iran was close to building a nuclear weapon. Iran struck back hard. China, a powerful friend of Iran that buys its oil and sells it weapons, became very angry and told Israel it had crossed a red line. This is important because it shows China is no longer just watching from the sidelines, it is now a major player in the Middle East's conflicts. This event has made the world a more dangerous place, as the problems between Israel and Iran are now mixed up with the bigger competition between the United States and China.